I covered my sister's rent for 6 years while she told her husband I was jealous of her until he found the bank statements. My name is Petra Lane, and I was 34 the afternoon my sister's husband called me from a parking lot and said he needed to show me something. His name is Dean. He had been married to my sister Vivian for 4 years. He was a quiet man, the kind of quiet that is not absence but attention, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, and who had always treated me with a warmth that I had noticed and appreciated and never fully understood, given what I now know Vivian had been telling him about me. He said he was sorry to call out of nowhere. He said he had found something, and he did not know what to do with it, and I was the only person he could think of who would be honest with him. I said, "Go ahead." He said he had been going through their joint bank account looking for a recurring charge. His card company had flagged, and he had found something else instead. He said there were 72 months of incoming transfers from my account. He said the amounts varied but averaged around $1,083 a month. He said the memo line on every single one said rent. He said Vivian had told him her parents helped with the rent when they first moved in, and that they had been financially independent for years. He said her parents had been gone for 6 years. He said Vivian told him I barely spoke to her because I was jealous of her marriage. He said the transfers kept coming every month for 6 years. He said Callie, he used the wrong name. He was that shaken. He said he did not understand. I said my name is Petra. He said, "God, I'm sorry." "Petra, I'm sorry." I said it was all right. I said I would explain everything. I said, "Can you come over?" He said yes. He said he was already in his car. I said I would make coffee. I hung up the phone. I sat at my kitchen table. I thought about 6 years of the first of every month, and 72 transfer confirmations, and a sister who had been telling her husband I was jealous while I was paying her rent. Then I got up, and I made the coffee. Welcome back to Quiet Justice Stories, where the quiet ones finally get heard and the truth always arrives with paperwork. If you have ever been called jealous by the person you were sacrificing the most for, this story is for you. Drop a comment below and subscribe so the next one finds you. My sister Vivian is 2 years older than me. She has always been the beautiful one. I do not say this with bitterness. I say it as a fact, the way you state the weather. Something true about the landscape that shapes everything around it without being anyone's fault. Vivian is the kind of beautiful that makes rooms rearrange themselves when she enters. The kind that comes with a particular magnetic quality. People move toward her, laugh harder, offer more, remember her longer. She has always known this. She has always used it, not cruelly, not consciously most of the time. The way people use any natural advantage, without examining it, because examining it would require acknowledging it, and acknowledging it would require something she had never been asked to develop. Because when you are Vivian, you do not need to develop the skills that plain people develop to get through the world. People simply give you things. I am not plain. I want to be honest about that too, because this story is not about beauty or its absence. I am a financial planner. I am competent and organized and specific, and I have the kind of presence that makes people trust me with their money, which is a different kind of valuable than the kind Vivian has, and which has served me well in 9 years of professional life, and which has never once made a room rearrange itself when I walked in. We are different people. We have always been different people. What we were not for the first 30 years of my life was enemies. We were sisters in the specific imperfect way of 2 women raised in the same house who understood each other's flaws and loved each other anyway, and who had built something between them that was not without friction, but was genuine. I thought it was genuine. I was right about the friction. I was wrong about what was underneath it. Our parents died within 14 months of each other. Our father first, a heart attack on a Wednesday that nobody saw coming, because he was the kind of man who seemed permanent. Our mother, 14 months later, Grief, the doctors said carefully, and a body that had decided it did not want to continue without him. I was 26 when our father died, 28 when our mother followed. Vivian was 28 and 30. We inherited the same amount. A modest sum, the careful savings of two people who had lived carefully their whole lives, split exactly in half because our parents were precise and fair and had never once treated us differently in the documents, even if life had distributed its advantages unevenly between us. My half went into an investment account. I managed it the way I managed everything, specifically, patiently, with an eye on the long term. Vivian's half was gone in 14 months, not through carelessness exactly, through Vivian's specific relationship with money, which was that money was for living and living was for now, and the future was an abstraction that she trusted would resolve itself when it arrived. It had always resolved itself, because there had always been someone to resolve it. First our parents, then me. She called on a Sunday evening 2 months after her inheritance ran out. Her voice was the specific version she used when she needed something, warm and a little fragile and laced with the particular vulnerability of a woman who had learned that vulnerability was the fastest route to yes. She said things were a little tight. She said the apartment was beautiful, but the rent was more than she had anticipated. She said she hated to ask. She said she just needed a bridge. A few months, until she got her footing. I asked how much the rent was. She said $1,400 a month. I said I would cover it for 3 months while she stabilized. She said I was the best sister in the world. I said I would need her to pay it back when she could. She said, of course. Of course was a fiction we both agreed to maintain. 3 months became 6. 6 became 12. In month 14, she told me she had met someone. His name was Dean, and he was a structural project manager, and he was serious and kind, and Vivian said he was the first man she had ever met who made her want to be different. I said I was happy for her. I meant it. She said things would be different now. She said she was going to get her finances together. She said she was going to pay me back. She said Dean did not know about the rent situation, and she would prefer to handle it herself before she told him. I said I understood. I kept paying. I told myself 3 more months. 3 more months became the rest of the year. The year became 2 years. 2 years became the week Vivian and Dean got married in a ceremony that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and that I attended in a dress I had bought on sale, and at which I gave a toast that made 17 people cry, including Dean's mother, who said afterward that Vivian was lucky to have a sister like me. Vivian smiled when she said it. I smiled back. The rent transfer went out 4 days after the wedding, the same as every month, $1,100. They had moved into a new apartment, higher rent. I had adjusted accordingly. Here is the thing about being the financial planner, sister. People assume the money management makes it easier. They assume that because I understand compound interest and investment returns and the mechanics of wealth building that $1,100 a month for 72 months costs me less somehow. That the professional knowledge insulates me from the personal cost. It does the opposite. I know exactly what $78,000 invested at a moderate return over 6 years becomes. I know what I traded. I made the trade anyway because she was my sister, and the alternative, watching her lose her apartment and her stability and whatever tentative foundation she was trying to build with Dean, felt worse than the number. I am not telling you this to establish my virtue. I am telling you because I want you to understand that the money was a decision I made with full information. What I did not have full information about was what Vivian was telling her husband about why I never called. I found out about the jealousy in the 3rd year, not from Vivian, from her friend Cass, who had known us both since college and who had the quality of a woman who believed in honesty even when it was inconvenient, and who called me on a Tuesday to tell me something she thought I should know. She said she had been at dinner with Vivian and Dean the previous weekend. She said my name had come up. She said Dean had asked why Vivian and I did not see each other more, and Vivian had said it was complicated, and that I had always had a complicated relationship with her happiness. She said complicated relationship with her happiness was the polite version. She said Dean had pressed, and Vivian had said the truth was that I had always been jealous. She said jealous of her marriage specifically. Cass said she had not said anything at the dinner. She said she was saying something now. I said, thank you for telling me. I said I would handle it. I hung up and sat at my desk and looked at the most recent transfer confirmation on my screen. $1,100, sent 4 days earlier. Received. I thought about the word jealous for a long time. Then I called Vivian. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was warm, the warm she used with me when nothing was wrong, the genuine version, the one that reminded me why I had paid the rent for 3 years and counting. I said I had heard something I wanted to ask her about directly. She said, of course. I said, someone told me you had described our distance as being about jealousy on my part. There was a pause. Not long. Half a second. But I had been listening to Vivian's pauses for 30 years, and I knew what that specific half-second meant. She said people misread things sometimes. She said she loved me. She said the distance was just life and busyness, and she missed me too. She did not say the word jealous. She did not deny it. She redirected with warmth, and I let her redirect, because the alternative was a confrontation I was not ready to have, and because the rent was due in 2 weeks, and I needed to decide something before I decided anything else. I decided to keep paying. I decided to keep the records. I decided to wait. Some accounts take time to settle. Year 4 brought a new piece of information that arrived the way important information often arrived in my life. Not dramatically, but quietly, through the specific alertness of a woman who pays attention to what is not being said. Dean called me. Not about money. Not about Vivian. He called to wish me happy birthday. My birthday is in October, and Vivian had not called, and Dean, who had my number from the one time we had communicated about a surprise party plan that had ultimately not happened, called instead. He said he hoped I had a good day. He said Vivian had mentioned it in passing, and he had not wanted it to go unacknowledged. I said thank you. He said he wished we all saw each other more. He said he had always liked me from the few times we had met. I said I felt the same way. He said he hoped whatever was between Vivian and me could get better with time. He said it gently, not accusingly, as a man who had been told a version of the story and was trying to be kind within the limits of what he knew. I said I hoped so too. I said I thought it would. He said, well, happy birthday, Petra. I said, thank you, Dean. I hung up and sat with the birthday call for a long time. He was a good man. He was a good man who had been told his wife's sister was jealous of his marriage, and who had called that sister on her birthday anyway, because he was the kind of person who believed in reaching across distance rather than letting it calcify. He deserved the truth. I just did not know yet how he was going to find it. If you have ever been called jealous by the exact person you were quietly subsidizing, if you have ever had your generosity reframed as resentment by someone who needed the story to be that way, stay with me. Subscribe, so this story reaches you all the way to the end, because what Dean found in that parking lot changed everything. In year 5, something shifted, not in my payments. Those continued with the same monthly precision that had characterized them since the beginning. First of the month, $1,100, memo line rent, confirmation saved to the folder. What shifted was Vivian's calls. She had always called sporadically, not on a schedule, in the specific irregular way of someone who reached out when she needed something and drifted when she did not. In year 5, the calls stopped almost entirely, not completely. The birthdays still produced a text. Holidays a message in the family group chat that Vivian treated as a broadcast medium rather than a conversation. But the calls, the ones that used to come when rent was due, when something was tight, when she needed me to adjust the payment. Those stopped because the payment had become automatic, and she had stopped needing to ask for it. I had become infrastructure, reliable, invisible, expected. The way you stop thinking about the electricity until it goes out. I paid the first of every month, and she stopped calling, and somewhere in that silence, the jealousy story had room to grow, because I was not there to contradict it, and she was not there to face me while she told it. I thought about calling. I thought about having the conversation. I thought about telling her what Cass had told me and asking for the truth directly. I kept deciding to wait. I am a financial planner. I understand delayed outcomes better than most people. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hold your position and let the situation develop. I held my position. I kept the folder. Year 6 started the same as the previous 5. Transfer on the 1st. Confirmation saved. Then in March, Vivian called. Not a text, a call. Her voice had something in it I had not heard before. Not the warm, fragile vulnerability of a woman who needed money. Not the breezy distance of a woman who had stopped needing to ask. Something tighter. She said she and Dean were doing really well. She said they were thinking about buying a place. She said they had been saving, and Dean had a good year at work, and they were finally in a position to be completely independent. She said she wanted me to know. I said I was glad to hear it. She said, so we probably won't need the arrangement anymore. The arrangement? 6 years, 72 months, $78,000. The arrangement. I said, that's great, Vivian. She said, I hope we can be closer now that things are more settled. I said I would like that. She said she would call soon. She did not call. The transfer did not go out on the 1st of April for the first time in 72 months. I sat at my desk on April 2nd and looked at the absence where the confirmation usually was and felt something I had not expected. Not relief, not anger. The specific hollow feeling of a person who has been useful for a very long time and has just been told the usefulness is concluded. I closed the laptop. I went for a walk. I thought about what she had said, the arrangement, and I thought about Dean in a parking lot in October calling to wish me happy birthday, because the woman who had named my generosity as jealousy had not gotten around to it. Dean called 8 weeks after Vivian's call. He was in a parking lot. He had found the bank statements. He had found 72 months of transfers from my account to their rent account, and he had been sitting in that parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to understand what he was looking at. He said, Vivian told me her parents helped with the rent when we first moved in. I said, yes. He said, her parents have been gone for 6 years. I said, yes. He said, these transfers go back 6 years. I said, yes. He said, every month. I said, every month. He said, 72 of them. I said, 72. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, she told me you were jealous of our marriage. I said, I know she did. He said, why would she say that? I said, I think because the truth was more complicated than jealousy, and jealousy was simpler to explain. He said, the truth being that you were paying our rent. I said, yes. He said, for 6 years. I said, yes. He said, well, she told me you were jealous. I said, yes. He was quiet again, a longer quiet this time. The specific quiet of a man who is doing arithmetic that does not involve numbers. Then he said, can I come over? I said, the coffee is already on. Dean arrived in 20 minutes. He was a tall, quiet man in a work jacket with the specific look of someone who had been crying in a car and had done his best to address the evidence before coming inside. He sat at my kitchen table. I put coffee in front of him. He had his phone open to the bank statement. He turned it toward me. 72 Rose, Petra Lane, $1,100. Rent, one after another, after another. I looked at it. Then I went to my desk and I brought the folder. I set it on the table between us. I said, this is my copy. He picked it up. He opened it to the first page. Month 1, Transfer confirmation. $1,100. Received. He turned the page. Month 2. He turned pages for a long time. He did not say anything. When he reached the last page, he closed the folder and set it flat on the table and put both hands on top of it and looked at the window. Then he said, "How much?" I said, $78,000. He closed his eyes. He said, "She told me you barely called because you were jealous of what we had." I said, "I know." He said, "Did you know she was saying that?" I said, "I found out in year 3. He said, "And you kept paying?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because she was my sister, and the rent was real, and the story she was telling about me was her problem to solve, not mine." He looked at the folder. He said, "This is her problem to solve." I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm going to have to talk to her." I said, "I know." He said, "I don't know what I'm going to say." I said, "You'll figure it out." He said, "Are you angry?" I thought about it honestly, the way I thought about everything. I said, "I am tired." I said, "Tired is what angry becomes when it has been going on long enough." He said, "That's fair." He looked at the folder one more time. Then he said, "Thank you for telling me the truth." I said, "You already had the truth." I said, "You found it yourself." He looked at the bank statement on his phone. He said, "I wish I had found it sooner." I said, "So do I." The conversation Dean had with Vivian is not mine to tell you in detail. He told me the outline afterward, not because I asked, but because he felt I deserved to know the shape of it. He said he had come home and sat at the kitchen table and put his phone with the bank statement open in the center of it and said nothing. He said Vivian had looked at it and then looked at him. He said he had asked her to explain. He said she had tried 3 different explanations in the space of about 4 minutes, that the transfers were something else, that she had planned to tell him, that I had offered, and she had not wanted to seem ungrateful by refusing. He said none of the explanations addressed the jealousy. He said he had finally asked directly. He said he had asked her why she had told him I was jealous of their marriage when I had been paying their rent for 6 years. He said she had not answered for a long time. He said when she answered, she said she was ashamed. She said it had started as a way to explain why I did not call more, and it had become